On the day I was discharged from the hospital, I should have been going home to balloons and cake. Instead, I got a text that started with, "Mom, I don't have time to deal with you." By sunset, I was sitting in a vinyl recliner that smelled like bleach and pee, while a nurse called the place a care facility, while the residents whispered what it really was, a prison for the elderly. My daughter didn't come to see me for 3 years. And when she finally did show up, it wasn't because she suddenly remembered I existed. It was because she found out I was rich. I'm 60 now, and I live in a little craftsman house in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. Big porch, hydrangeas, a nosy neighbor who pretends she's not spying over the hedge. I drink my coffee on the deck every morning and stretch my hip like the physical therapist drilled into me. And I think, so this is what surviving your own child feels like. But the story really starts 5 years ago, when I was a different woman. Naive, hopeful, and still stupid enough to believe that blood automatically means love. Back then, I lived alone in the two-story house where I'd raised my daughter, Emily. I'd bought it with what was left of the settlement when my ex-husband decided fatherhood was too constricting and ran off with his yoga instructor. I was an administrative assistant at a community college, the woman who knew where every file was and how to fix the copier when it swallowed someone's syllabus. I wasn't rich, but my bills were paid. I had my piano, my garden, my collection of mismatched mugs from thrift stores, and I had my holidays. God, I loved holidays. As a kid, I used to lie awake before Christmas with my heart pounding, not because of the presents, but because the house felt different, like someone had turned up the color. The smell of cinnamon rolls, the quiet murmur of my parents talking in the kitchen, my dad pretending not to know all the words to carols and then singing every single verse perfectly. My dad was a quiet man, but he loved his symbols. His most prized possession was a gold pocket watch that had been his father's, given after my grandfather's service in World War I. When Grandpa died, it went to my dad. When my dad died, he put it in his will. To my daughter Linda, for her rainy day, use it when the world forgets to be kind. I kept that watch in a small velvet box inside my bedroom closet, not because I thought I'd ever sell it, but because it felt like my father was still watching over me, tick by tick. When my daughter was little, I made holidays into magic for her too. Christmas, birthdays, Easter egg hunts in the backyard, themed cupcakes for every minor occasion. But Mother's Day was my day. Once Emily was in high school, she'd come over with flowers and some lopsided craft even when she was too cool for that kid stuff. We'd bake a chocolate cake from scratch, sing along off-key at my old piano, and flip through photo albums. She'd lay her head on my shoulder and say, "You're the best mom, you know that?" And every year I'd think, whatever I did wrong in life, at least I did right by her. Then life did what life does. It took one bad second and stretched it into years. One weekday morning, I was coming down the stairs with a laundry basket in my arms. I'd done it 1,000 times. But that morning, my slipper caught on the edge of the step, my right foot slipped, the basket flew. For a split second, I thought, oh, this is how old ladies die. I woke up on the floor, hips screaming, unable to move. Later, they told me I passed out from the pain. What I remember is the violence of it, this sharp, white-hot tearing sensation, and then nothing. The neighbor kid heard me screaming when I came to. He called 911. The ambulance showed up, the whole production, straps, oxygen, that awful fluorescent light. At the hospital, the doctor came in with that professional concern face and used the words every older person dreads. Bad break, hip fracture. They wheeled me off to surgery, and I remember thinking, it's okay, Emily will be here. She's my kid. The surgery itself went as well as these things go. What complicated everything was my heart. Stress, pain, age, pick your poison. 2 days after surgery, in the middle of the night, my chest clenched like a fist. The monitors went insane. I had a heart attack right there in the hospital bed. If there's one thing I will always be grateful for, it's that it happened there and not alone on my kitchen floor. They saved me.
Stents, medications, that ICU beeping soundtrack. I woke up to tubes and wires, and my daughter sitting in the uncomfortable visitor's chair, her eyes huge and red. "Mom, you scared the crap out of me," she whispered, grabbing my hand. She stayed. She really did. For that first month, she was there almost every day. She brought me magazines, fussed over my pillows, argued with nurses when my pain meds were late. She cried in the hallway where she thought I couldn't see. I clung to that, because while I was lying there, hooked up to machines, I was also bleeding money. Between the surgery, the heart attack, the ICU stay, and the additional rehab they said I'd need, my decent insurance quickly showed what a joke it was. The hospital social worker came in with a stack of papers that might as well have been written in ancient Greek. "Your out-of-pocket will be significant," she said, in that neutral practice tone. I did the math. Significant meant I couldn't pay it. I had some savings. Not enough. I had the house. I'd almost paid it off. 10 more years and it would have been mine, free and clear. But at 60, with a broken hip and a broken heart, I knew I wasn't going back to full-time work. So I did what felt logical at the time. I took out a mortgage on the house. I told myself, fine, I'll recover, I'll move in with Emily for a while, maybe rent the house or sell it later. I told myself it was temporary. I talked to Emily about it. We sat in my hospital room, the late afternoon light making everything look softer than it was. "I'll move in with you guys for a bit," I said, "just until I'm stable. I'll hire a home nurse to help with the heavy stuff. I don't want to be a burden." She bit her lip. "That might be complicated," she said. "Complicated how?" She glanced at the door, like someone might be listening. "Mark isn't thrilled with the idea." "Ah, Mark, the husband." She'd married him 3 years earlier. He was one of those guys who always wore golf shirts and talked about leveraging assets over beers. He worked in some mid-level corporate job that sounded important and mostly involved sending emails with buzzwords. I'd never liked him, but I tried, because that's what you do when someone is your only child's chosen person. "What's not to like?" I asked, attempting humor. "I'm adorable, I come with my own pill organizer, and I make great lasagna." She forced a smile. "It's just that we have a small place, Mom, and with her hours and his hours, he thinks it'd be better if you had professional care." "Professional care," I repeated, my stomach dropping. "You know, rehab facility, then maybe assisted living for a while, just until you're—" She trailed off. "Until I'm what? Not dying? Not inconvenient?" The doctor came in, saving her from finishing the sentence. He smiled. "Good news, Linda. You're healing well. With proper physical therapy and care, you should regain the majority of your mobility. It's going to be hard work, but if you have support at home, there's no reason you can't live independently." He meant it as encouragement. To me, it sounded like one last argument in my favor. "See? I won't be dead weight. I just need some time." I looked at Emily, willing her to hear what I couldn't say with my chest full of wires. She just looked tired. The day of my discharge rolled around. The date on the whiteboard in my room read May 12th, Mother's Day. I took it as a sign. I even curled my hair with a little travel-size iron the nurse let me use. I put on my least hospital-ish pajamas. I imagined Emily rolling me out in a wheelchair, sunlight on my face, maybe a quick stop at a bakery on the way to her house. Instead, the nurse came in with a stack of discharge paperwork and an apologetic look. "So, your daughter called. She can't make it." My heart did that sinking thing again. "Is she okay?" "She's fine. She asked me to give you this." The nurse handed me a folded piece of paper and set a plastic-wrapped smartphone on the bed rail. The paper was a printed email. The phone had a new text notification. I read the message on paper first. I think my brain carved it in with a knife. Mom, I don't have time to deal with you.
You're a burden to me right now. Mark and I found you a good nursing home. They'll take care of you. It's for the best. I read it twice, thinking I'd misread. Then the text came through, a shortened version of the same thing. No happy Mother's Day, no I love you, just logistics and dismissal. The nurse tried to keep things brisk and professional. This facility is very reputable, she said, pointing to a brochure I hadn't noticed on the bedside table. I didn't cry. Not then. Shock is merciful that way. They loaded me into a medical transport van instead of Emily's car. A bored-looking driver made small talk about the weather while I stared out the window, watching the city blur past. The good nursing home was 30 minutes away, tucked behind a strip mall and a church. From the outside, it looked okay. Brick, some flower beds, a few rocking chairs on the porch. Inside it was all neutral colors and that ubiquitous cleaning products over old linen smell. A receptionist checked me in like I was a package. "Welcome to Maple Ridge Care," she said with the same chirpy tone you use at a hotel. "You'll love it here." No one who actually lived there loved it. By the end of my first week, I'd learned what the residents really called it: the prison. Some staff were kind, some were overworked, some clearly didn't care at all. Meals were meals, edible, barely. Activities were scheduled like daycare: bingo, chair yoga, crafts with plastic beads. I could handle the bad food and the boredom. What I couldn't handle was the silence. Days went by with no visitors for anyone down my hallway. I'd watch as the few residents who had family would light up when someone came through the doors with balloons or flowers. You could almost see them stand up straighter. My name never got called. The facility had a policy: one phone call, scheduled each month, with your primary contact. Mine was Emily. She set it up with the administrator. I held on to that first call like a lifeline. When it came, it lasted 9 minutes. "How are you, Mom?" "I'm okay. How are you?" "Busy. Listen, I don't have long, work's insane, and we might be moving soon." "How's the place?" "It's fine," I said, swallowing everything I wanted to scream. "I miss you. We'll come visit when things calm down." They never did. Month after month, the same routine. A scheduled call, 10 minutes max. No mention of holidays, no mention of visits. Christmas came. The facility stuck a fake tree in the corner of the day room. A volunteer choir came in and sang carols, slightly off key. I sat there, in my wheelchair, hands folded in my lap, and realized I didn't love holidays anymore. They turned into little knives. Each one was a reminder of who wasn't there. 3 years passed in that place. 3 years of institutional beige walls, lukewarm coffee, and watching people get swallowed by loneliness. I did my physical therapy. I got stronger. I graduated from wheelchaired walker to cane. I made friends with the nurses who actually gave a damn. I also listened. When old people get bored, they'd talk. I heard stories from residents whose kids parked them there and vanished. Women who'd raised 3, 4 children and now couldn't even get a birthday phone call. Men who'd fought in wars, worked 2 jobs their whole lives, now treated like defective appliances. We joked about it sometimes because the only alternative was crying. Someone would say, "Welcome to the island of misfit toys," and we'd all laugh a little too hard. Then one Tuesday afternoon, something happened that would change everything. One of the nurses wheeled in a guy in a suit. She said, "This is Mr. Dawson. He's here to give free appraisals of antiques, collectibles, that kind of thing." He had on a gray suit that tried to look expensive and almost succeeded. He'd brought a folding table and a little velvet pad like we were on some discount version of Antiques Roadshow. The flyer taped to the bulletin board said, "Curious what your old items are worth? Local antique specialist will be visiting. Free verbal appraisals." The residents lined up with their treasures: rings, brooches, medals, a baseball card or 2. I watched for a while, my boredom wrestling with my suspicion. He was charming. Lots of ma'am and sir and, "Oh, what a beautiful piece." But I noticed something. He always had cash in his pocket. And every time someone brought something with even a hint of potential value, his eyes got a little sharp. He said, "That's a lovely ring. The stones are small and the setting is worn. I could maybe give you $200 as a favor?"
It's a buyer's market. The ring was old, yes. It was also clearly gold. The stones were small, but they caught the light like quality diamonds do. He counted out $200 in 20s. She cried as she sold it. "Now I can buy a fancy wheelchair," she joked weakly. He smiled, pocketed the ring, and moved on. I didn't like him. My father always told me, watch a man's eyes, not his mouth. This guy's mouth said, helpful businessman. His eyes said, vulture. That night, back in my room, I pulled my little lockbox off the closet shelf. Inside was my father's watch. I'd brought it with me to the facility because I couldn't bear the thought of it sitting alone in my empty house. Also because, deep down, I knew it was my rainy day fund. I held it in my palm and thought of my dad, of his quiet pride, of the way his hands shook when he gave it to me at his kitchen table. You use this when the world forgets to be kind, kiddo, and someday it will. He'd been right about everything else. The next day, I waited for the antique guy. When it was my turn, I sat down across from him and placed the watch on his little velvet pad. His entire face changed for half a second. The professional smile slipped. His eyes widened, then narrowed, a flash of pure greed darting across his features before he smoothed it away. Bingo! He picked it up like it was nothing special, turned it over, squinted through a cheap loop. "Nice piece," he said casually. "What can you tell me about it?" I asked. "Well, it's old," he said. "Gold-plated. The engraving is interesting, but the market for pieces like this is soft. Sentimental value mostly." He hesitated, like he was being overly generous. "I could maybe do 2,000, he said. "Cash. As a courtesy. It's more than I should offer, honestly." He sat back waiting for me to gasp and grab his hand. $2,000 was a lot of money to someone stuck in a place where a shampoo upgrade cost extra. He was used to people saying yes. I watched his eyes. They were practically shouting, "Please be stupid, please be stupid, please be stupid." I smiled. "Thank you," I said. "I think I'll hold on to it for now." He shrugged, like he didn't care either way. "Your call. If you change your mind, here's my card." He slid a cheap business card across the table. "Dawson Antiques and Estate Liquidation." I took it. Not because I planned to call him, because I planned to make sure I never needed to. The next day, I asked to use the facility computer. You had to sign up for time like you were checking out a library book. I Googled antique watch appraisal reputable near me. I picked a place downtown with actual reviews, a real storefront, and no clip art on their website. Then I called the number. "Can you do a written appraisal on a pocket watch?" I asked. "Of course," the woman on the phone said. "We charge a small fee for written appraisals. Are you able to bring it in?" "I'm in a nursing home," I said. "I'll need to arrange transportation, but yes." They were used to that. She gave me a date and time. I booked a medical transport van for a medical-adjacent outing. The facility charged me, of course. Everything was a line item. I tucked my father's watch into my purse, along with all the documents I had about it. The appraisal office was nothing like Mr. Dawson's folding table. Glass cases, security cameras, a vault. The appraiser was an older woman with sharp eyes and zero patience for nonsense. She asked questions, listened, handled the watch like it mattered. Then she left me sitting in a little waiting area with bad coffee while she disappeared into a back room. 15 minutes later, she came back with a folder. "This," she said, "is an exceptional piece." I blinked. "Exceptional how?"
It's solid gold, she said, not plated. Early 1900s. The engravings are from a limited run for veterans. Very rare. The mechanism is in excellent condition. The provenance, she tapped the documents I'd brought, is solid. At auction, conservatively, you'd be looking at... She wrote the number down instead of saying it out loud. I stared at it. Then I stared again. 2 more zeros. Another digit. Is this real? I whispered. Very real, she said. If you were patient and found the right collector, you could even do better, but this is a safe estimate. The number on that paper was $2 million. $2 million. I had been about to sell it for $2,000. The difference between being conned and being set for life. I laughed. It wasn't a pretty laugh. It sounded a little hysterical. The appraiser watched me calmly. Do you want to insure it? Or, are you thinking of selling? My hand tightened around the watch. My father's voice in my head again. Use it when the world forgets to be kind.
The world had forgotten me so thoroughly, they'd locked me away and thrown out the key. So yes, I sold it. We consigned it with a reputable auction house. I left the office clutching a contract worth more money than I'd ever seen in my life. Back at the facility, I waited. 6 weeks later, the check cleared. After taxes and fees, I was still sitting on a very healthy 7-figure sum. The day the money hit my account, something in me snapped back into place. Not my hip, my dignity. Here's what people don't tell you. When you've been treated like you have no choices for long enough, the idea that you suddenly do is almost overwhelming. I could leave. I could afford a house, in-home care, good groceries, organic lotion if I wanted. Hell, I could pay someone to come in and fluff my pillows outwardly. But first, I needed a plan. Not just for leaving, for revenge. Because somewhere out there, my daughter was living her life, going to brunch, posting selfies, maybe complaining about how hard it was to juggle work and dealing with her old mother in a home. I had seen nothing of her for 3 years except those scheduled phone calls. If she'd been struggling with her own demons and just frozen, it would hurt, but I might have understood. But I'd heard things. Through the grapevine, an old neighbor who visited her own mom at the facility, I heard that Emily and Mark had bought a big house. New construction, HOA, pool, the works. Top of the market, the neighbor said. Crazy mortgage. But they figured, with your house to sell and your inheritance someday. There it was. I wasn't a mother to them. I was a future check. Well, checks can bounce. So I did 3 things. First, I hired a lawyer. I found one who specialized in elder law, a woman in her 40s who looked at me like a person, not a problem. I told her everything. The accident, the text, the nursing home, the calls. She listened, took notes, and then said, "Okay, let's get you your life back." We arranged for me to check out of the facility against medical advice. My lawyer handled the paperwork, made it clear I was mentally competent, and that any attempts to block me would be met with legal action. Second, I bought a house. Not a mansion. I didn't suddenly develop a taste for marble countertops. I found a sweet little 1-story craftsman with a ramp already installed, wide hallways, and a backyard big enough for tomatoes and bird feeders. 10 minutes from a good hospital, 5 minutes from a grocery store that carried my favorite tea. I paid cash. Third, I hired a nurse. Full-time, live out, with references that made me want to hug her through the phone. Her name was Carla. Former ICU nurse, late 30s, no nonsense, wicked sense of humor. She did not baby me. She did everything else. We moved me in 2 months after the auction money came through. I walked, or rather hobbled with my cane, out of Maple Ridge Care and didn't look back. A few residents waved, a couple of nurses hugged me. Most of the staff barely noticed, just another bed freed up. I tipped the CNAs who had been kind to me. I left a strongly worded letter with administration about the ones who hadn't. Then I stepped out into sunlight that actually felt like it belonged to me. For the first time in years, I arranged my own furniture. I chose my own curtains. I stocked my pantry with things that didn't come in bulk plastic trays. Carla helped me develop a routine. Morning stretches, short walks around the block, physical therapy exercises, decent meals. My hip slowly stopped feeling like a stranger's. I went to my own doctor, not the one contracted with the facility. We adjusted my medications. We talked prevention, not just survival. I opened new bank accounts. I put most of the money into conservative investments. I created a trust. Then I rewrote my will. Before, everything would have gone to Emily by default. House, savings, heirlooms. Now, Emily was left exactly one thing: the antique dealer's business card, stapled to a copy of her "You're a Burden" email. My estate, the house, the investments, whatever was left when I died, would go to a fund for residents stuck in terrible nursing homes with no advocates, a scholarship at the community college where I worked, a little nest egg for Carla if she was still with me when I passed. My lawyer looked at the documents and then at me. "Are you sure?" "I am very sure," I said. "Because here's the thing about revenge when you're old. You don't have time for half measures. I didn't tell Emily any of this. I didn't call her from my new house.
I didn't send an address change. The facility had her contact info for billing, but they didn't bother updating her when I left. She wasn't on any of the forms as financially responsible after all, just primary contact. So for about a year, I existed in this quiet, secret pocket of freedom. I rediscovered little joys. Saturday mornings with good coffee and no screaming roommates. Afternoons watching birds fight over the feeder. Learning how to use streaming services. Carla and I became friends. She'd bring over her teenage daughter sometimes, and we'd bake cookies together. I slipped that girl little life tips, the sort of things I used to tell Emily. Never marry a man who calls you too emotional when you're right. That sort of thing. Then, one fall afternoon, my past showed up at my front door. It was almost Thanksgiving. I was in the kitchen, elbow deep in pie crust, when there was a firm knock. Carla was off that day, so I wiped my hands, picked up my cane, and went to the door. When I opened it, my heart stopped for a second. There she was. Emily. 3 years older, a few more fine lines, a jacket that probably cost more than my first car. Behind her, parked in my driveway, was a shiny SUV. "Mom?" she said. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then she pasted on a smile. "There you are. We've been trying to reach you." She swept past me into the house without waiting to be invited. Just like that, like she still had the right. I closed the door slowly. My hands were shaking, but not with fear. With anger. "We?" I asked. "Who is we?" "Me and Mark," she said, as if that were obvious. "We went by the home and they said you checked out. No one would tell us where you went." I raised an eyebrow. "So you did go by?" "Of course we did," she said quickly. "We were worried." I let that sit in the air for a moment. 3 years of no visits. Now, suddenly, she was worried. She looked around the house, appraising. Her eyes ran over the hardwood floors, the cozy furniture, the art I'd picked up at local markets. "Nice place," she said. "Really nice, actually." "Thank you," I said. "I bought it." She blinked. "Bought? With what money?" There it was, the crack in the polite facade. I walked, slowly, because my hip still liked to remind me who was boss, into the living room. She followed like a shark scenting blood. "Sit," I said, gesturing to the couch. She sat. I stayed standing a few feet away, leaning on my cane. "I'm glad you're alive," she said, in that overly bright tone people use when they're reading from a script. I was so scared when I heard you'd left the facility. You should have called me. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Called me? I said. Like you called me on Mother's Day when you dumped me there? She flushed. That's not fair. We did what we had to do. You were very sick. You needed more care than we could give. Mark didn't want a crippled mother-in-law cluttering up his guest room, I finished for her. I know. Her jaw tightened. You're being dramatic. Am I? I said. You visited how many times in 3 years? She opened her mouth, closed it, looked away. We were busy, she muttered. Too busy to send a Christmas card? A birthday card? To show up once and sit with me for half an hour? Silence. The thing about getting older is you stop dancing around other people's comfort. You just say the thing. You put me in a place you never visited. You let strangers manage my care. You reduced me to a scheduled phone call, as if I were a bill you had to pay once a month. She winced. Mom, that's not... Look, we're here now, okay? Can we just move forward? There it was, the pivot. The let's not dwell on my behavior, let's focus on what you can give me now. I leaned on my cane and stared at her. Why are you here, Emily? She took a breath. There was a little tremor in it. She tried on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Well, she said, since you brought it up, we're in a bit of a situation. I waited. The market's been rough. Mark's company downsized, he took a pay cut, our mortgage is killing us. We've got the kids' college to think about and the car, and she trailed off, studying my face to see if I was getting it. I got it just fine. I just wasn't reacting how she wanted. So, I said, you're broke. She flinched, temporarily cash flow challenged. And you came to me because... Her eyes flicked again around the room.
The good furniture. The updated kitchen. Because you're obviously okay, she said. And I heard from Mrs. Parker that you sold some old watch? Grandpa's watch? The one you always said was for a rainy day? She mentioned something about an auction. God bless neighbors and their big mouths. I kept my face neutral. Yes, I said. I sold my father's watch. Her whole body leaned forward. You could have told me, she said. I mean, that was family property. We should have discussed it. I have a right to be involved. I'm your daughter. There it was. The entitlement. The assumption that my assets were hers by extension. You had a right to be involved, I said softly, before you decided I was a burden. She rolled her eyes, exasperated. We've been over this. I did what I had to do. You were in the hospital, you almost died, I was overwhelmed. I almost died, I repeated. You were overwhelmed. Stop twisting my words, she snapped. Can we please focus? We're about to lose the house, Mom. The bank's breathing down our necks. We're looking at refinancing, but rates are high. And with your windfall, you could help. Just a little. A loan or, an advance on my inheritance. There it was. She said it out loud. I felt something in my chest. Not the tightness of a heart attack. A hard, cool clarity. No, I said. She blinked. What? No, I repeated. I will not be giving you money. Her mouth opened, closed. Her face went red, then pale. Mom, she said, leaning forward, her voice dropping, this isn't just about us. You're talking about your grandchildren. I know. I hope their parents are better to them than you were to yours. They might need that example. Her eyes flashed. You can't be serious, she said. You're sitting here in this house, hoarding money from some watch, and you're going to let your own family suffer?
I laughed again. Small, sharp. Oh, sweetie. You let your own family suffer 3 years ago. I'm just declining to finance your lifestyle now. Her composure cracked. You owe me, she burst out. You owe me for everything I did. I was there when you had your heart attack. I dealt with the doctors. I filled out the paperwork. You did the bare minimum, I said. And then you abandoned me. I did not abandon you, she shouted. I put you somewhere safe. I had a life. I had a job. I couldn't just drop everything and become your nurse. I never asked you to. I asked to stay with you while I recovered. I said I'd hire help. You chose the nursing home. You chose not to visit. You chose not to call except when it was scheduled. Every month, you had the chance to be my daughter, and every month, you chose convenience instead. She stood up, pacing. Her hands were shaking now. So that's it. You're gonna punish me over some feelings while we drown in debt. This isn't punishment. This is a boundary. She stopped and turned on me. Fine, she snapped. You want boundaries? Here's one. You help us, or we're done. Me, the kids, all of it. You will never see us again. My heart hurt. Not the medical kind, the other kind. You haven't seen me in 3 years. You weaponized absence long before today. She didn't like that. She stepped closer. Too close. I could smell her perfume, sharp and floral. How dare you, she hissed. After everything I've done, after everything I sacrificed, you're going to sit here and act like a victim and call it boundaries? I held my ground. My fingers tightened on the cane. I am a victim of elder neglect by my only child. Her hand shot out and grabbed my arm, hard. You're coming with me, she said through clenched teeth. We're going to the bank, you're gonna sign whatever needs to be signed, and then you can come back and sulk in your little house. She yanked, hard. My hips screamed. The room tilted for a second. In that second, I saw it. The stairs behind me. The wood floor. The cane I almost dropped. Another fall. Another fracture. Maybe this time I wouldn't be lucky enough to be in a hospital when my heart misfired. She pulled again, trying to drag me forward. Her face was twisted in anger. Something kicked in. Not physical strength. I lost most of that in the hospital years ago. It was the training of every physical therapist who ever looked me in the eye and said, "You are more stable than you think.
Plant your weight, bend the knee slightly, use the cane as an anchor, not a crutch." I shifted my center of gravity without even thinking about it. Instead of stumbling toward her, I dug the rubber tip of my cane into the floor, braced my uninjured leg, and refused to move. She wasn't expecting resistance. She was expecting the frail mother she'd decided I was. Her pole met a solid, rooted body. The momentum jolted her. She stumbled forward, nearly losing her balance. For one terrifying moment, she teetered, arms pinwheeling. I could have grabbed her. Reflex, instinct. I didn't. I just stepped aside enough to keep myself out of harm's way. She didn't fall, not fully. She caught herself on the back of the couch and spun around, eyes blazing. You crazy old... Her hand lifted like she might hit me. Something inside me snapped. Not the fragile, breakable thing she assumed was there. Something older, stronger. Before I could overthink it, I slapped her. Not hard enough to cause real harm, just enough to shock her. My palm connected with her cheek in a sharp, decisive sound that seemed to echo in the room. She froze, hand to her face. "You put your hands on me one more time," I said, my voice low and even, "and I will call the police and file an assault report. I will also tell them about the nursing home. I will tell them about the text where you called me a burden and shipped me off. I have it saved, along with every call log from the facility.
Do you understand me?" Her eyes filled with tears, not of hurt, but of fury. "You would do that to your own daughter?" she whispered. "You already did it to your own mother," I said. "I'd just be telling the truth." We stared at each other, breathing hard. She was the first to look away. "This is unbelievable," she muttered. "You're insane. You're selfish. Do you know what people will say when they find out you refuse to help your own grandchildren?" "I know what they'll say when they see this," I said. I walked over to the side table, opened a drawer, and pulled out a folder. Inside was a printed copy of her Mother's Day email, the one she'd sent to the hospital that day. I kept it on paper, just in case my phone ever died or got lost. I held it out to her. She snatched it, scanned it, and paled. "You kept this," she said. "I keep all important documents," I replied. "Part of being an adult." I walked to the door and opened it. "This conversation is over," I said. "You need to leave." She didn't move. "Mom," she tried again, softer now. "We can fix this. We can work it out. Just help us, and we'll be there for you. Holidays, visits, all of it. The kids miss you." You'd think that might have worked. Once upon a time, it would have. But I heard what she wasn't saying. Perform love in exchange for cash. I shook my head. "If they miss me," I said, "they know where the phone is. They're old enough to call their grandmother without permission." "You'll regret this," she snapped suddenly, the sweetness vanishing. "When you're old and alone and need someone, you'll wish you'd helped us." I smiled. A small, tired smile. "I already did the old and alone thing, honey," I said. "In a place you put me. I got through it. And I have someone now. Several someones, actually, who are paid to care and also happen to give a damn. I'm good." She stared at me like she didn't recognize the woman standing in front of her. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she only ever knew the version of me who bent until she broke. I held the door open. "Goodbye, Emily," I said. She hesitated. For 1 second, I saw something flicker across her face. Fear, maybe, or the realization that this was real. Then she lifted her chin, shoved past me, and stalked down the walkway. At the edge of the driveway, she turned. "You're dead to us," she said. I nodded. "I have been for a long time." Then I closed the door. I leaned against it for a moment, breathing. My hand stung, my hip ached. I didn't cry. Instead, I walked, slowly, deliberately, to the kitchen, picked up my phone, and called my lawyer. "Document it," I said, after I told her what happened. "Everything. The attempted physical force, the demands for money, the threats. We can file a police report. Even if nothing comes of it, it creates a record." "Do it," I said. We also added an addendum to my will that day, just for symbolic satisfaction. My daughter, Emily, is intentionally and specifically disinherited. This is not an oversight. Consequences have a way of arriving slowly at first, then all at once. Over the next year, I heard about Emily's life through the same grapevine that had told me about my watch. The neighbor who visited her mom at Maple Ridge reported that Emily and Mark's big fancy house went up for sale. "Foreclosure," she whispered over coffee.
They overextended. I guess they thought they had a safety net. They moved it into a smaller rental across town. Nothing wrong with that. Lots of people rent. But for them, it was a public downgrade. Their social media changed, too. I shouldn't have, but I looked. Curiosity is a hell of a thing. The humble brag posts about kitchen remodels and beach vacations dried up. In their place, vague complaints about toxic family members and people who don't support us when we need it. I didn't respond. I didn't engage. I just lived my life. I joined a book club full of other women who'd been through their own flavor of family betrayal. We drank wine and dissected novels and, occasionally, our own children's choices. I volunteered with an advocacy group for elder care. With my lawyer's help, I donated a chunk of my money to fund legal support for people trapped in bad nursing homes with no one to speak for them. Maple Ridge Care got a surprise audit one spring. A few of the worst staff members were quietly let go. One nurse who'd ignored call lights ended up sanctioned. I didn't engineer all of it, but my letters and donations helped. Revenge doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes it's just making sure the system that swallowed you has to answer for it. Every so often, I'd wonder if Emily would show up again, try a different tactic, send the kids as emotional pawns. She never did. Last Christmas, I got a card in the mail from an unfamiliar return address. No name, just the street. Inside was a store-bought card with a generic winter scene. No note, just a signed name. Lily, my granddaughter. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at that signature. The handwriting was neat, earnest. There was no return address beyond the envelope. No phone number. I didn't know if she'd sent it behind her parents' backs or as some kind of olive branch or just because the guidance counselor made the class write holiday cards to family. I sent one back anyway. A neutral, kind card. No matter what, I am proud of you, I wrote. You can always write to me at this address. If that's all I ever get, that's okay. I made my choices. Her parents made theirs. People hear my story and ask if I regret selling the watch, if I regret cutting my daughter off. Here's the truth. I regret ever raising a child to believe that love meant unconditional access to me, no matter how she treated me. I regret not setting boundaries sooner. But the watch? The money? The house? No! My father gave me that watch for a rainy day. When it finally rained, it poured, and I used it exactly as he wanted, to save myself when no one else would. As for my daughter, she locked me in a prison for the elderly and threw away the key because caring for me didn't fit her aesthetic. She only remembered I existed when she smelled money. My revenge wasn't the slap. It wasn't even closing the door on her. My revenge was choosing my own comfort over her convenience and making sure that when I die, the only thing she'll inherit from me is a piece of paper that proves exactly who she chose to be. These days, holidays are different. They're not the magical days of my childhood or the chaotic frosting-covered marathons of motherhood. They're quieter. I bake myself a small cake. I invite over a couple of friends or Carla and her daughter. We eat, laugh, swap stories. Sometimes late at night, I take out the appraisal folder and look at the number that changed my life. Not because of the money itself, but because it reminds me, I am not a burden. I am not a bill to be scheduled. I am not a future inheritance to be managed. I am a woman who survived being locked away and came back on her own terms. And if that makes me the villain in my daughter's story, so be it. In mine, I'm finally the one holding the pen.
So, another story of my grandmother has end, and be clicking here, you will have when more such stories.